In the quiet town of Cedar Grove, where maple trees lined the streets and porches welcomed neighbors with sweet tea, the Mason family moved into the old Victorian house at the end of Willow Lane. It was a warm August day in 1998 when they first arrived, their moving truck kicking up dust that danced in the golden afternoon light. As a documentarian who has spent 2 decades investigating the paranormal, I've encountered many stories, but none quite like this one. Sarah and Thomas Mason had saved for years to afford their dream home, a sprawling Victorian with gingerbread trim, stained glass windows, and a history dating back to 1876. Their children, Emma, 8, and Liam, 5, raced through the empty rooms, footsteps echoing on hardwood floors, their laughter bouncing off walls adorned with faded wallpaper. The previous owners left rather suddenly, the realtor had mentioned. Her smile tight. Family emergency. The price reflects their eagerness to sell. Sarah had sensed something off in the woman's tone, but dismissed it. At 40% below market value, the house was too good an opportunity to pass up. Thomas, an accountant with practical sensibilities, had agreed. The math made sense. That first night, as the family settled into their sleeping bags in the master bedroom, furniture delivery scheduled for the following day, Emma asked a question that would later seem prophetic. "Mommy, who's the lady in the rocking chair?" Sarah looked to the empty corner where her daughter pointed. "There's no one there, sweetie. Your imagination is just working overtime because we're in a new place." Emma frowned. "She's sad. She keeps looking for someone." Thomas chuckled. "Old houses make noises, princess. Those creaks and groans are just the house settling." But the house had stood for over a century. It had long since settled. 3 weeks after moving in, Sarah noticed changes in Emma's behavior. Her once outgoing daughter had become withdrawn, speaking in whispers and staring into empty spaces. She'd wake in the night, claiming someone was calling her name. "Emma, honey," Sarah said one morning over breakfast, "you look tired. Are you having bad dreams?" Emma shook her head, pushing cereal around her bowl. "The crying lady keeps me awake. She wants me to help find her baby." Thomas exchanged worried glances with Sarah. "Emma, there is no lady in the house except your mom. She says she's been here a long time. She says this was her home first." That afternoon, Sarah called a child psychologist. Moving to a new town, starting a new school, the adjustment could be taking a toll on Emma. The appointment was set for the following week. That night, Sarah woke to the sound of floorboards creaking in the hallway. Assuming it was one of the children heading to the bathroom, she slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Thomas. The hallway was empty, but Emma's door stood ajar. Inside, Sarah found her daughter standing by the window, moonlight washing over her small frame. "Emma? What are you doing up, sweetie?" Emma didn't turn. "She's in the garden again, digging. She's always digging." Sarah joined her daughter at the window. The backyard lay still under moonlight, untouched. No movement disturbed the shadows. "There's nothing there, Emma. Come back to bed." "You're not looking right," Emma insisted. "She needs help finding what she lost." Sarah guided her daughter back to bed, tucking the covers around her. As she turned to leave, Emma whispered, "She knows I can see her. That's why she wants me to help." A chill ran down Sarah's spine, despite the warm summer night. The following day, while the children were at school and Thomas at work, Sarah found herself in the basement of the Cedar Grove Historical Society. Curiosity, or perhaps something more urgent, had driven her there. "I'm researching the history of our home," she told the archivist, an elderly woman with knowing eyes. "The Victorian on Willow Lane." The woman's smile faltered. "The Carson house," Sarah nodded. "We're the Masons. We just moved in last month." The archivist disappeared among the shelves, returning with a bound volume of local newspapers from the 1930s. "You might want to start here," she said, her voice softer than before. Sarah spent hours poring over yellowed pages, finding nothing noteworthy until she reached November 1937. There, a small headline caught her eye. "Local woman committed following infant's disappearance." The article described how Eleanor Carson, wife of prominent businessman Richard Carson, had been institutionalized after reporting her 3-month-old daughter missing. Police had found no evidence of abduction or foul play. Richard Carson claimed his wife had been suffering from severe melancholia since the birth, often forgetting she had even had a child. When Eleanor began insisting someone had stolen her baby in the night, doctors diagnosed her with postpartum psychosis. Sarah's hands trembled as she read on. Eleanor had maintained until her commitment that she heard her baby crying in the night, but could never find her. She accused her husband of hiding the child. Richard Carson remarried less than a year after Eleanor was institutionalized. She died at Lakewood Asylum in 1943, never having seen her home again. The final paragraph noted that despite Eleanor's delusions, many in town found it strange that there were no photographs of the Carson baby and no records of a birth certificate had been located. That evening, Sarah shared her findings with Thomas, who received them with predictable skepticism. "It's a sad story," he conceded, "but it doesn't mean our house is haunted. These old towns are full of tragic histories. But what if Emma is actually seeing something?" Sarah pressed. The timing of when she started talking about the sad lady looking for her baby. Thomas interrupted gently. "She's a sensitive kid in a new environment. She probably overheard someone in town mentioning the story." Sarah wanted to believe him. That night, she checked on the children before bed, finding both peacefully asleep. She paused at Emma's doorway, watching her daughter's steady breathing. A rocking chair sat in the corner, part of Emma's bedroom set they'd brought from their previous home, and for just a moment, Sarah thought she saw it move slightly as if recently vacated. She blinked, and the chair was still. At 3:17 a.m., Liam's screams tore through the darkness. Sarah and Thomas bolted awake, racing to their son's room. They found him standing on his bed, pointing toward his closet, face streaked with tears. "The digging lady was here," he wailed. "She was looking under my bed." Thomas checked under the bed, in the closet, behind the curtains, everywhere a child might imagine a monster lurking. He found nothing. Sarah cradled Liam, his small body shaking against hers. She had dirt on her hands. He hiccuped between sobs. She kept saying, Where? Sarah felt ice in her veins. Liam had never mentioned seeing a woman before. Emma appeared in the doorway, unsurprised and eerily calm. "She thinks her baby is buried somewhere in the house," she said matter-of-factly. "She thinks her husband put the baby in the walls." Thomas gathered both children into the master bedroom for the remainder of the night, but Sarah lay awake, listening. Just before dawn, she heard it. The unmistakable sound of a woman weeping, distant, yet somehow intimately close, as if the sound originated from within her own head. The following Saturday, Thomas took the children to visit his parents 2 towns over, a previously planned overnight trip that now seemed like blessed timing. Sarah had begged off, claiming a migraine, but her real purpose was investigation. Once alone, she walked through each room slowly, running her hands along the walls, tapping occasionally, listening for anything unusual. In what was now their dining room, she found a section of wall that sounded hollow compared to the rest. Sarah called Ruth Jenkins, a neighbor in her 70s who had lived on Willow Lane her entire life. "I hope I'm not bothering you," Sarah said when Ruth answered, "but I'm curious about the history of our house." "The Carson place," Ruth replied, the same recognition the archivist had shown. "I wondered when you'd call." Over tea at Ruth's kitchen table, the older woman shared what she knew. "I was just a girl when it happened, but people talked." Eleanor Carson was a gentle soul, shy but kind. When she got pregnant, the whole town celebrated with them. Richard was so proud until the baby came. Something changed in him. "What do you mean?" Sarah asked. Ruth's eyes clouded with old memories. The baby was born with a birthmark covering half her face, blood red and raised. In those days, such things carried stigma. Richard wouldn't let anyone see the child except the doctor and the housekeeper. Eleanor grew isolated, depressed. Then one morning, Richard announced the baby had died in the night. Crib death, he claimed. Sarah's cup froze halfway to her lips. But there was no funeral. No body was ever shown. Richard had the death certificate signed by Dr. Palmer, his hunting buddy, and claimed he'd arranged a private burial on family land upstate. Eleanor broke down completely, saying the baby wasn't dead, that Richard had hidden her away because he was ashamed. And no one questioned this? Ruth shook her head sadly. Richard Carson had power in this town. When Eleanor began causing scenes, he had her committed. Remarried that banker's daughter from Springfield before Eleanor's side of the bed was cold. The article I found said Eleanor kept insisting she heard her baby crying at night. Ruth nodded slowly. The housekeeper, my Aunt Beatrice, believed Eleanor. She quit working for the Carsons after Eleanor was taken away. Said she couldn't sleep in that house anymore, that she heard things too. Walking home, Sarah felt watched from every window of her house. Inside, she returned to the hollow wall in the dining room. Using a letter opener, she pried at the baseboards until one came loose. Behind it, she found older wallpaper, a pattern from an earlier era. Her hands shook as she peeled a section away, revealing the plaster behind it. She hesitated only briefly before tapping the plaster with the handle of the letter opener. It crumbled easily, too easily, as if someone had already broken through it once and patched it hastily. As chunks fell away, Sarah's letter opener hit something solid. She cleared more plaster, then stumbled backward with a gasp. There, nestled in the wall cavity, was a small bundle wrapped in deteriorating fabric. Sarah's heart thundered in her chest as she carefully extracted it. Unwrapping the time-worn cloth revealed a porcelain doll with a painted birthmark covering half its face. Pinned to the blanket was a yellowed note in faded ink. "Since you insist on your delusions, Eleanor, perhaps this will satisfy them. Your mind is sick. There never was a child with a monster's face. This doll is the only baby you've been hearing." Sarah sank to the floor, the doll in her lap. Her phone rang, startling her. It was Thomas. "Just checking in," he said cheerfully. "How's the head?" "Thomas," she whispered. "I think something terrible happened in this house." That night, Sarah couldn't bring herself to sleep. She sat in the living room, the doll and note on the coffee table before her, waiting. For what? She wasn't certain. At midnight precisely, the temperature in the room plummeted. Sarah's breath clouded in front of her face. The doll on the table shifted slightly, though no draft could have moved it. "Eleanor?" Sarah spoke to the empty room. "I found what your husband hid." A sound like distant sobbing reached her ears, growing closer by the second. "But it's not your baby, is it? It's just a doll he planted to make you think you were crazy." The crying stopped. The air grew colder still. "Where is your baby, Eleanor? Where did Richard hide her?" A whisper, so faint Sarah wasn't sure if she heard it or felt it. "Garden, under the roses." At first light, Sarah took a shovel to the garden, to a spot where unusually vibrant roses had bloomed despite neglect. The soil turned easily, too easily, as if it had been disturbed before. 3 feet down, her shovel struck something solid. The police arrived within the hour after Sarah's frantic call. Yellow crime scene tape cordoned off the property as forensic technicians carefully excavated the tiny skeleton. Detectives interviewed Sarah about how she came to dig in that specific location. "Research and intuition," she answered, unwilling to mention Eleanor's guidance. Analysis would later confirm the remains belonged to an infant approximately 3 months old, from the appropriate time period. More damning was the journal police found hidden in a compartment beneath the attic floorboards. Richard Carson's private writings, detailing his shame over his daughter's deformity, his rage at Eleanor for producing a monster, and his methodical plot to eliminate the child and declare his wife insane. With the truth unearthed, something changed in the house. The atmosphere lightened, as if a heavy presence had lifted. When Thomas returned with the children, Sarah told him everything, showing him the newspaper articles, Ruth's testimony, and the police reports. This time, he believed her. That night, as Sarah tucked Emma into bed, her daughter smiled for the first time in weeks. "The sad lady isn't sad anymore," Emma said. "She found her baby." "Is she still here?" Sarah asked gently. Emma shook her head. She said, "Thank you." She said they're going somewhere better now. Sarah stroked her daughter's hair. "Good. Everyone deserves peace." As she turned to leave, Emma added, "She said we can stay. This is our home now." 2 weeks later, a small funeral was held in Cedar Grove Cemetery. The tiny casket held remains that had waited over 6 decades for proper burial. The headstone read simply, "Baby girl Carson, finally at rest." Sarah stood at the graveside after others had departed, placing a single rose on the fresh earth. "I hope you found each other," she whispered to the autumn breeze. Walking home, Sarah felt lighter, yet permanently changed. She had always considered herself a practical woman, grounded in the tangible world of cause and effect. Now she understood that some connections transcend conventional understanding, that sometimes the dead reach out to the living, not to frighten, but because they need someone to listen. The Mason family stayed in the Victorian house, transforming it with laughter and new memories. Occasionally, on quiet nights, Sarah would catch the faint scent of roses drifting through rooms where no flowers bloomed, a gentle reminder that healing can come even after decades of pain. In all my years documenting supernatural phenomena, I've learned that what we call hauntings often represent unfinished business, stories that demand completion. The tale of Eleanor Carson and her lost child illustrates this principle perfectly. Not all ghosts seek vengeance. Some simply seek justice, truth, a proper farewell. If walls could speak, what secrets would they reveal? How many more Eleanor Carsons exist? Their stories buried beneath layers of deception and time. As I continue my work, I carry the lesson of Cedar Grove with me. Sometimes the most important thing we can do for restless spirits is simply to listen, to believe, to act as witnesses to truths that have long awaited discovery. If this story sent chills down your spine, please subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share your own ghostly encounters in the comments below. Your support makes these haunting tales possible. See you in the next video.